All right, so imagine sending your kids to school and you think that they're out there, they're getting a solid education, which in turn happens to be hard to come by nowadays, and they're learning math, they're learning science, all of the classics, only to find out they've been handed material that looks less like biology homework and more like a late night cable special. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, you might not know this, maybe you do, but currently there is a fight over the Massachusetts House Bill 2042. This is the so-called Child Protection Act, which was filed back in, I believe it was January of this year. Now, on paper, this bill is deceptively simple because what they want to achieve is just striking out a single sentence from an existing Massachusetts general law. But in practice, this small change would have massive impact, okay? It would have a massive impact, and it could effectively reshape how schools, how libraries, and how teachers are operating. If you look at the last line in Chapter 272, Section 28 of the Massachusetts General Laws, it effectively provides this legal shield, we'll call it, that schools, museums, and libraries, they can't be prosecuted for sharing material that is deemed harmful to minors. And this is the exact line that Bill 2042 wants to eliminate. But let me provide some more context on the word harmful in this sense, because this isn't just about anything that a parent dislikes or banning anything that a parent dislikes. Because in Section 31 of those general laws, it defines this as material that appeals to kids' sexual curiosity, is patently offensive by community standards for minors, and lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So what this means is we're not talking about like banning Shakespeare here or banning health class here. We're talking about this. There's this gray zone, right? And we all know this is happening, by the way. If you have kids, you know this is happening. There's this gray zone of material that crosses the line, and it crosses the line into, let's say, explicit territory without offering any real educational value. Now, if you're like me, you're probably sitting there just as confused as I was when I was reading these things and wondering to yourself, why wasn't this nailed down in the law from the start? Why wasn't this common practice to begin with? Or why wasn't there a mechanism built in to hold institutions accountable in the first place? And I could be wrong on this, guys, but the only real answer I could come up with here is the timing, because this law was written back in 1974. And I think back then, lawmakers probably assumed there was enough common sense or enough common decency to know where the line was. But unfortunately, as you know, you could fast forward to today, and I would say for maybe the last 17 or 18 years or so, that common sense has been slipping, okay? That's me putting it lightly. And that line that I talked about, that I just mentioned, it keeps on moving further and further and further away. And now, instead of trusting people to draw the line where it originally was, we need laws to reel things back in and make sure kids are actually protected from material that crosses the line into the inappropriate category. Let's call it that. At least that's my reasoning. Could I be wrong on that? Maybe. Do I think I'm completely wrong? Absolutely not. So again, this exemption was added in 1974. It was a different world back then. And this is when lawmakers were more than likely, I would say, more worried about some overzealous prosecutor banning Shakespeare for a suggestive scene, right? That's at least what I think that they may have been thinking. But fast forward 50 years, and the supporters of this are arguing that the exemption is being exploited. And I don't think that's too far off here, guys. I think you're going to agree with me on this one. There are a lot of books and a lot of classroom resources with explicit illustrations and guides that go way, way beyond just education and into the territory most adults would call adult only. Therefore, H2042 is pitched as a simple fix to that. They want to strike that last sentence and apply the same standards to everyone with no special carve-outs for educators. And I'm not hating on educators here, okay? This is not a hate on educators. I want to be fair here. Now, if you made it this far, you might also be sitting there thinking the same thing that I was as well, which is, isn't this just some kind of book ban or something like that? This is I'm just being honest with you guys. This is what I was thinking. But here's where it gets interesting, because in Section 31, as I referenced earlier, of Massachusetts laws, remember, the laws already exist. They are already defined on what counts as harmful to minors. It's not just about parents objecting to a book that they don't like because the law itself says that the material is harmful if it appeals to minors' sexual curiosity. That's the key here, okay? Or if it's judged offensive by adult community standards. Again, this is common sense thinking here. Or even if it lacks lacks serious value for minors, right? That's what this is. It's not about banning books. Any way you try to shake this, it's not about banning books. So in other words, there's already a 3-part test baked into the law to separate legitimate education from material that crosses the line. And it doesn't stop there. The law goes into detail about what sexual conduct and nudity means, what counts as obscene, and even defines terms like disseminate and visual material. We're talking books, films, live performances, even digital communication. It's already covered within the Massachusetts law itself. So when supporters of this bill, the H2042, argue that schools are hiding behind exemptions, what they are really saying is the definitions are already on the books, but the exemption lets institutions dodge accountability for following them. And that's the truth, guys. And that is also what I think is happening here. Not only do I think this is happening in Massachusetts, but a lot of this is happening throughout the country. And remember, this is the first inception of this bill. It's the very first step. Could there be amendments? Absolutely. Could lawmakers maybe water it down or tighten it up or even include more detailed language? Sure, that could absolutely happen too. But this is how legislation works here. It starts simple, then it gets reshaped in the political grinder. Now, one actual legitimate benefit of Massachusetts, believe it or not, is that at least the public has an opportunity to file a bill. Now, whether or not it gets through, that's another story. That could be another video entirely. But that's you gotta not discredit the right to actually be able to do this, because unlike many other states, only legislators and lobbyists, they're the only ones that get a seat at the table. Where here, regular citizens can bring forward ideas, they could ask a rep to file them by request and actually get a hearing at the State House. And that matters, guys. It matters because whatever you think about this bill, and I'm in agreement to this bill, by the way, this isn't some top-down scheme cooked up in a back room or something like that by, some crazy nonprofit that's trying to, eliminate something from schools, right? That's not the case here. It started as a citizen petition with parents and neighbors and people who felt strongly enough to put pen to paper and to push their issues into the spotlight. And that's exactly what they did. And that's really democracy in action. So here's what I would say. Here's the opportunity. If you're in Massachusetts and you care about this, you could actually do something about it. How about that? And the only thing up for debate here is whether schools and libraries should keep their shield from accountability, or if they should play by the same exact rules that everybody else is playing by. You got to remember that in terms of context. Everybody else has these rules. They don't, okay? They do not. So if you're interested in supporting this bill, all you need to do, it's very simple. All you do is email the House clerk with your name, I believe your address, and ask them to put you as a co-sponsor with limited publication. I could leave more information about that in the description below, but that's all I got. I think that this is a stepping stone bill. That's what I think this is. I think this is a stepping stone bill. Could it morph into other things in the future? I think so. I think it can if it gets enough support from the citizens and if it gets enough support from some of the legislature or politicians here. I think that it could start to grow some feet, right? And maybe it needs a little more language. Maybe it needs a little bit cleaning up. Maybe it needs this, maybe it needs that. But I think the intentions are right. And again, nobody is looking to ban friggin' books from school. What we want to create is an environment where we could be confident in sending our kids to school and not have to worry about what is being taught to them. Think about what happened in Burlington with the survey, okay? Now they're being investigated. It's a big deal, right? We want to eliminate those things from school. Now, one other thing that I will talk about briefly here is that, because I thought of this too, I have kids. You think to yourself, well, you ban or you eliminate things from schools. All they have to do is go online, go on their Chromebook, go on this, go on that, and they could find all of this information as well. Guess what? I was born in 1985, okay? So that means I lived in school or went to school in the 90s, right? And that's a reality. They can do that. But the fact of the matter here is there needs to be some kind of safeguard when they are in that kind of setting. Because what happens here, this is a systemic problem in my opinion. What happens here is this. The more normalize these material and these things become, the more it becomes normal. Okay. And we're already, that line that I talked about earlier, we're already way past that line. Okay. That line has moved by hundreds of miles already. And that's solely why I think when this was enacted in 1974, they didn't need to put extreme, and this would have been extreme given the time frame, extreme measures to be able to prosecute educators or librarians or, because I think that they were in a position where people had a little more common sense and a little more decency, where nowadays everything is just like out in the open, right? Like that's what it is. Everything is out in the open. But one place that I think that everybody should be able to agree on that we could at least keep our kids from, learning about stuff. And I'm not talking about biology here, guys, or like sex education or anything like that. I'm talking about obscene things like, again, what was happening at the survey in Burlington, right? I think that we shouldn't have to, as parents, we shouldn't have to worry about that. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but this is my take. Okay? If I didn't have kids, I would still be concerned with this. But then again, once you have kids, this is something that becomes monumental. Okay, it becomes monumental because parents live for their kids, right? It just is what it is. Every waking second of the day, that's what we do. We're thinking about our kids. We're wondering if they're okay. We shouldn't have to wonder if our kids are okay in school. We shouldn't have to wonder what the teachers are teaching our kids or what kind of surveys they're supplying our kids in school. That's absolutely ludicrous to me. And it's unfortunate because I'm willing to bet if I were a betting man, and I don't know enough about this to say this is 100% accurate, but if I were a betting man, I'm willing to bet you that the educators that are pushing these type of things, they're just desensitized from this stuff because they more than likely had the same exact thing when they went to school. So what I'm talking about here is younger educators, and I'm not knocking younger educators, okay? I'm not knocking it. It's just that they went through this system. They learned these things, whether it was, official education that they had to take or, some sort of auxiliary education backed by some nonprofit or whatever it may be, they're in a position where they're effectively brainwashed, right? And now that brainwashing that they had becomes common practice, and they don't see it as an issue because it's something that they learned. It's something that they grew up with. You see what I'm saying here? So that's what I'm saying. This is like a generational problem that's happening. And unless somebody steps in and does something about it, well, it's going to just continue to happen. And the worst part is, and again, I talk about this often, the worst part about stuff like this is, think about broader picture here, guys. We're in 2025, and again, the goalpost has moved moved to the other field is basically what is going on here. So imagine what it's going to be like in another 5, 10, 15, or even 25 plus years. I mean, it could get absolutely outrageous, absolutely outrageous. And we don't want to see that. We want to be the ones that are teaching our kids right from wrong. We want to be the ones that are teaching our kids about all of the things that happen in adulthood, right? We don't want that to happen in schools by showing them explicit images and all of this other stuff. Now, I will tell you, I hope to God that nothing happens to this video. I don't think I said anything inappropriate, but if you suddenly see this video vanish, you know what happened. That's basically it, okay? So anyway, I really would like your support on this. I don't ask you guys for much. If you could, take a look at this, and if you want to look at the material, it's all over online. Just, look up the bill, look up the information, and make your own determination of this, okay? But if you could support the bill, I would greatly appreciate that, guys. I really would. So thank you for watching the video, and thank you for supporting the channel, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.